Okay, let's get started. So again, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. My name is Gabriela Nassif. I'm a senior research associate at the Global Women's Institute here at George Washington University in DC. And I'm working as the project manager for Putting Survivors at the Center, which we are implementing with our partners, Women for Women International, and with support from our donors, the Bureau of Humanitarian Assistance over at USAID. So for those of you who are new to the project, PSC is a participatory action research project that aims to build the capacity of non-GBV organizations. And these are organizations that do not provide GBV service provision to better support survivors following a spontaneous disclosure of GBV. This project really emerged from a long history of conversations with Women for Women, which itself is a non-GBV organization that provides targeted socioeconomic support and programming geared toward women and girls in humanitarian context. So really based on their own experiences, frontline staff at Women for Women, due to the nature of their work with women and girls and providing really targeted programming, often receive these spontaneous disclosures during their routine programming. So from those kind of experiences emerged this kind of desire and need for more information on how to do things like using a survivor center approach, and how to properly refer survivors, topics that as a non-GBV organization, you might not actually have a lot of information about or access to. And sorry, just to check, is everybody seeing the slides? Okay, great. So the issue that we were seeing is that, or that Women for Women was telling us about, is that while these organizations could get their hands on some resources that were really important, like the GBV Pocket Guide, many were they recognized that maybe they shouldn't be using the Pocket Guide and should actually be kind of learning much more about the GBV specialist services that are provided in their area. So that is directed towards and what we had heard from the experts that we consulted with this project is that organizations were using the guide really when they shouldn't have been. Like I just mentioned, since really in the Women for Women there are GBV specialist services, we really wanted to work with them to fill this gap, right? How to build the capacity of such organizations to better handle and support survivors to access these specialized services. So to help us achieve this goal, we're working with several different partners. First, of course, is, oh, sorry, one second. Is there?
Your audio is just kind of going in and out a little bit, but just let's get through the introductions and see how it goes. Sorry, everyone. Hopefully it will work.
Okay, sorry. So as I said, we're working with Women for Women. That is our main partner and the primary implementing partner in the countries where we're working. And within Women for Women, they have their global supports team, as well as country level program managers and staff. And so here I wanted to just take a minute to ask the folks that are with us from our project team to briefly introduce themselves. So I'll start with Anastasia, if you don't mind going ahead and introducing yourself.
Thank you so much, Gabriela. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are watching us from, and feel welcome. My name is Anastasia Olembo. I'm the Associate Director for Gender Equality and Social Empowerment at the Women for Women International at the global level. And my role in this project, Putting the Survivor at the Center, is the technical, I provide technical support based on my background in gender-based violence implementation and research. So thank you so much.
Okay, let's jump over to Katie.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm Katie Alanis. I'm a senior project manager with Women for Women International, and acting as the project lead on Women for Women's side to coordinate this project globally.
Great. How about Jeff? Oh, Jeff, we can't hear you.
Shall we go to Martina briefly while Jeff tries to sort out his audio?
Yeah, go ahead, Martina.
Martina, you're on mute.
Yeah, you're on mute. There you go.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from wherever you are. My name is Martina KG Wilson. I am the project coordinator, Women for Women, handling this project of putting survivors at the center in South Sudan. Working with the partners, especially the non-GBV specialist organization, to ensure that they learn the knowledge, they have the knowledge and learn the skill of handling disclosure from GBV survivors as they work in their day-to-day work, so that they are able to refer them to get support which they are supposed to get from the response centers. Thank you.
Jeff, did you want to try again to see if the audio is working? Sorry, we still can't hear you, Jeff. So that is Jeff, who is our the project manager for putting survivors at the center at Women for Women's DRC program. And Jeff, we'll have you reintroduce yourself towards the end once you are like helping us with some of the directed questions. And I think Maureen.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Maureen Murphy and I'm a research scientist with the Global Women's Institute. And I, along with Gabriella, am working on this project from a global perspective. We're so happy to have you all with us today.
Okay, thanks everyone. So to get back to the overview of our project, so Putting Survivors at the Center is a 3-year-long project, and each year corresponds to a specific phase. So phase 1, which has been completed, was the formative research phase, during which time we collected information on the stated need that we saw on the slide before for more support handling GBV disclosures for non-GBV organizations. Then in phase 2, which we're currently about halfway through, this data was first, validated with stakeholders and later used to develop a set of pilot programs, pilot program models, which we have launched and are about halfway through 6 months into each of the pilots. And what will be happening, so the rest of phase 2, which we're in now, will be completing the pilot program, and phase 3, which is the last and final phase and year of the program, will be really working to kind of collect all of the data pilot projects and put together some, key resources like guidelines that are, hopefully discussing and explaining the things that we've learned from the pilots, what works and what we might be able to do in terms of scaling them up and trying them out in other contexts. So along with our partner, Women for Women, at each of the country levels, so you heard the program manager from South Sudan, Martina, mention this, there are local partners that have also been engaged. These are Rio in the DRC, RD in South Sudan, and Mercy Corps in Iraq. And so here you can see this beautiful map with the places that we're working, again, in South Sudan, in the DRC, and in Iraq. Some of our Iraq colleagues are actually on the call, which is great. And so, as I mentioned, these local organizations are helping out some specific and targeted portions of the pilot activity. And I'll just give you some brief information about each of our partners. So in the DRC, we're working with Rio, whose areas of intervention include peace building and peace education. In Iraq, we're working with Mercy Corps, which I'm sure most of you are probably familiar with, as this is a really big global NGO, but they are helping us to roll out some pilot programming in federal Iraq. And then finally in South Sudan, we're working with an NGO called RD. And again, their areas of engagement include nutrition, agriculture, water and sanitation, and then hygiene and health. So this has been really great because they've allowed us to roll out some of our pilot activities in sectors that are a bit different than the ones where, say, an organization like Women for Women is working. So as I mentioned briefly, the first phase of our project was called the formative research phase. And this included not only, building from the preliminary information we had gotten from women, but really developing that through discussions and interviews with key stakeholders, primarily women and girls in the communities we're working with, as well as other stakeholders in the community. So thinking about different types of community leaders, representatives from both non-GBV organizations and GBV organizations. So our goal here was really to include as many people as possible to cast a really wide net, so that we could learn about some of the specific barriers and challenges that existed in each of these contexts for that were preventing survivors from accessing specialized services. You can see the second box here on the screen. That's the primary stakeholders. It was the organized and ran participatory action research workshops in each of the 3 countries. And what these did were to bring together, oh, sorry, I need to hand over to my colleague. I think there must be some sound issues. Sorry about that.
It's no problem, Gabriella, just to try to keep those down. I know some people were mentioning that they were having difficulty. So just to say, as Gabriella was talking about, definitely the formative research phase was an incredibly important aspect of informing everything that we're going to deliver in the next phase. So, we had that's what she said, the discussions with the country teams, and then the primary research, which is participatory action research. And then we really tried to validate this information by working with the technical advisory groups that were formed in each country, as well as at the global level. So really trying to make models that would work not only for Women for Women, which is a specific NGO with a specific type of programming, but as well as for other NGOs that are working in emergency spaces. Next slide. So what did we learn in the formative research stage? Really, what we found is not anything incredibly surprising, I think, if you work in the GBV space, but certainly it was great to get this in a more formalized way, particularly from the perspectives of non-GBV specialists who are not asked these questions very often. As well as, of course, survivors themselves. And of course, a lot of the things that we were finding are that there are, numerous barriers and challenges, such as financial barriers that include, a ability to pay for services in places that they cost money, transport, and also even just like logistical challenges, such as forms or examinations that are required. Prohibitive contexts. So for things so simple as, there's no one to take care of my family if I'm, needing to go and get help, or the locations of the services, which are often very far away. Of course, we often find, gender norms and stigma that are really affecting the accessing of services, as well as certain service providers. And then even if people got to the services, a lot of times they were not necessarily satisfied with the quality of the response, the quality that the services were able to provide. So what did we do with this? We built these out into recommendations, such as building the capacity of both non-GBV specialists and GBV specialists, trying to facilitate access to services, trying to actually improve the quality of services by doing training on things that non-specialists are able to talk about. So for example, Women for Women does gender training. That's one of the things that they do. So they're really able to do this and sort of modify some of their training materials to actually work with potentially, healthcare providers or police, et cetera. And then, of course, trying to just increase awareness and reduce stigma around accessing these services. Next slide. So we built these out into pilot programming, which we piloted in the 3 countries. We're going to be talking specifically about 2 of those countries today, South Sudan and DRC, because they both had their midpoint workshops recently over the course of the summer. We'll be reflecting on Iraq in a later session because they are going to be coming up in the next few weeks. So today we're really focusing on the African context and the piloting programming that we did, which was centered around these 3 pillars. The first, improving the immediate handling of disclosures. And that really is based on things like the GBV Pocket Guide, but really building that out and the things that you would do in that case of someone disclosing to you immediately. Trying to work to actually connect the survivors to services, not just necessarily saying, oh, here's a referral, but like what else can we do to strengthen referral pathways and get people to the services that do exist? And then finally, also providing some kind of more generalized psychosocial support that's not necessarily case management, it's not specific to GBV, but acknowledging that a huge proportion of our population is experiencing this violence. So what can we do around psychosocial support? Next slide. So as I said, we're now at the point we're halfway through the pilots, which is why we really wanted to talk about this and share some of our learnings. So in all 3 country programs, we have the pilots are ongoing. And at the halfway mark over the summer, GWI and Women for Women, we held these midpoint workshops to reflect on the pilot programming with the people who were trained, who experienced the different interventions, as well as other stakeholders in the community. And as I said, we're really going to be focusing here on South Sudan and DRC, Iraq findings to come. So next slide. So specifically thinking about South Sudan, the pilot activities that they were working on are first, the handling of GBV disclosures and safe referral training for frontline staff. So this is training the people who work day to day with Women for Women beneficiaries so that if someone discloses to them, they not only know what to do, but they feel confident in what to do. They have had, an in-depth training on the different pieces of providing psychosocial first aid, as well as referring them to care. We also piloted a training for community leaders on handling disclosures and safe referrals. Now, when we're thinking about community leaders, obviously there's potentially a huge ton of issues because community leaders can, be a really big challenge in these type of environments. They might really hold up inequitable norms. So our goal was not necessarily to fix everything with community leaders. It's just to sort of meet women where they are and that they're often disclosing to community leaders. And our goal with this training is really just to try to reduce some of the bad practices that we often see and really try to encourage referrals wherever we possibly can. So it's really trying to work with women and community leaders in that context. It's recognizing that there are a lot of challenges with this, but trying to do as much as we can. We're also trying to raise awareness and reduce stigma about accessing services. As well as in South Sudan, we were in a very kind of unique context where the Women for Women offices in Yei, the local GBV subcluster, the main women's rights organization that was leading that, had lost their funding and really needed some additional support. So we were in a position to really try to pilot some more innovative pieces of non-specialist organizations really supporting the cluster to do different activities, such as service mapping and referral pathway mapping, as well as actually trying to increase the trust and coordination from GBV specialists to non-GBV specialists. So having them actually sit together and talk about their issues, talk about how to do referrals, trying to actually sort of smooth some of the wheels in that piece. Next slide. So when we actually did the midpoint, what did it look like? So we visited the one-stop center. There is a one-stop center at the Yei Civil Hospital. It is not a traditional one-stop in that it does not have all of the services one would associate with a one-stop, but it does have health and psychosocial support. We had reflection sessions with frontline staff, including both with Women for Women and ARDI, to find out not only what they thought about the training, but how they had been applying the handling disclosures training. We had reflection sessions with GBV and non-GBV specialists, as well as community leaders, again, to understand the impacts of the piloting programming so far. As well as finally, we talked to the Women for Women managers to see what they were seeing that was different in the course of this. Next slide. So our emerging learnings from this, one, we got a lot of really positive feedback about the training and really were able to identify specific risky practices that had been reduced, as well as we really saw some increased good practices amongst staff. One of the biggest things we found was that non-GBV specialists are now more aware of the limitations of their role and when they should refer to a service. We often got a lot of people saying, before I would try to mediate, basically. I would go to people's houses, I would try to actually, intervene. And now I realize that that's not my job and I could actually be doing more harm than good. So we really saw a lot of that. Really, I would say the dialogues between GBV and non-GBV specialists were really important to strengthen trust and confidence in the referral pathways and actually work to get people from non-specialists to specialists in a more efficient way. And both specialists and non-specialists were really appreciative of them. So we really thought that was a useful learning. And then finally, the community leaders in particular really valued that connection to GBV specialists and building that trust. And they were much more likely to say that they were more comfortable actually sending a referral on now that they kind of understood the system and that they sort of knew the people, which was really important to them. Next slide. And then finally, just a quote that we got from one of our participants to sort of summarize what we were finding from the South Sudan case study. Before, I thought whatever I said was best for the survivor, but now I understand they should choose what's best for them. I also now ask their consent. I listen more now and give less advice. So that's in summary the South Sudan case study, and I'm going to pass it on to my colleague Anastasia, who's going to talk about the DRC.
Thank you so much, Maureen. As I continue from where you've left, I will be focusing on the pilot activities for DRC. And just following exactly what Maureen has said, there are various activities that were designed for pilots for each country. And for DRC, we were focusing on handling gender-based violence disclosures and safe referrals training for the frontliners staff. And these staff basically are trainers who are in contact with our women in our program. We normally run a gendered program for 12 months. These are the trainers who are in contact with these women who are likely to come and disclose to them instances of gender-based violence. So they needed to be trained in a manner then that appreciates how then they can do safe referrals so that they do not do any harm. And they also know exactly what is their level of what to do and where do they put a stop to safe refer to the specialist to begin case management. The second activity is training for community leaders on handling disclosures and safe referrals. We also realize that the community leaders have got various roles. And a lot of times in the study that the data we collected showed that women normally go to report to the community leaders sometimes, and when they report in terms of how they react, how they respond, they really didn't have the understanding and the capacity to be able to handle the disclosures in a manner that doesn't break confidentiality, but also that improves the well-being of the survivor in a manner then that will refer them to the appropriate services for them to get what is required appropriately. So the other activity is an emergency fund, which is very different from the South Sudan. You see, this is a fund that was set aside to be able to support the women when they come to disclose, because one of the challenge or one of the limitation they had brought forward is the fact that they could come and report, but then when you refer them, they are not likely to go and access those services because of transport, but also the fact that some of the services are given, they need funds to be able to pay for the services. So there is this emergency fund that was set aside, and it's ongoing. Then raising awareness of services and reducing stigma, including training male community members. Within a Women for Women program, we usually engage men as a parallel program where they support the women empowerment. And so part of this project, a pilot project activity, was to make sure that these men who are spouses of the women in our program also understand what gender-based violence is all about, and how they can be reducing stigma, blame, and profiling the women when they come to report. And so that they are also part of the extending their awareness in the communities where they are working, because we train them to be champions of change. And being a champion of change, you also need to understand, to have the knowledge about gender-based violence, where to report, how it presents itself, and how you can support the women so that they access the right services. Then training on gender equity and survivor-centered care for specialized service providers. Next slide, please. Yeah, so at midpoint activities at DRC, these are the activities that we conducted during the workshop that we had. Reflection sessions were held with Rio. We mentioned Rio as one of the partners, local partners that is working with our office in DRC at the community level, and also working with the community leaders in Bukavu. The other activity for the midpoint, we were reflecting on the sessions with Women for Women and Rio frontliners, also at Bukavu. So these are the activities that started at the beginning, and after 6 months, we wanted to know what is working well after the training that the frontliners received, the community leaders received, and the men engagement program participants also received. What changes are we seeing? What impact are we seeing? Are there some areas where they needed more training? Are there some gaps? Are there some elements where they need more information? So we had various meetings at various points in time, and we were able to gather feedback that has helped us to be able to design recommendations for as we move forward. Then another reflection that we held with the leaders within the organization, Women for Women International, because one of the roles that we defined at the beginning of the pilot was for the leaders, the managers, to be able to monitor, track, and provide the support that is needed for the frontliners and for the community leaders to be able to work within their limit and be able to refer where it is necessary. And also the other thing where the leaders come in is when it comes to mapping of the service providers and updating the referral pathways. They are supposed to be able to give support and also guidance in as far as that mapping and also that referral pathway is concerned. So we wanted to hear from them how all these aspects are working, what kind of challenges they are getting, and if the frontliners are able to deliver the trainings and refer the survivors based on the principles of do no harm, and also ensuring that confidentiality is adhered to. Then finally, we had a presentation to the local technical advisory group, which is their members who are based in Bukavu. We had a meeting with them and gave them the feedback that we were receiving, and we were also trying also to get more information from them, what needs to be improved, and especially when it comes to the emergency fund, how best can this emergency fund be utilized or be managed. Next slide, please. Yeah, so there were some key learnings that we drew out of the midpoint workshop. One was handling disclosure training has helped to reduce risky practices, increased good practices. So of course, earlier on, we were talking about where the frontliners, when they get disclosure, they were not so well prepared to be able to handle in an appropriate manner, bearing in mind the principles that govern confidentiality, consent, and making sure that they refer the survivors to where they are supposed to get the services as much as possible. The second learning was that frontline staff felt more confident applying the look, learn, and link. This is one of the areas actually where there was a lot of learning, because I remember when we were interviewing the frontliners, and they were saying, we used to do really bad things. We would form a small group when we get an incident reported to us, and we'll go and visit that household and be able to tell the husband whatever the husband was doing was not the right thing. But now, after learning the new methods, we know we are very careful, because it's also very risky for the survivor. Where once they have disclosed, we are not supposed to be sharing information. We expose them when we share information, and therefore just ensuring that we follow, look, listen, and learn has helped us to maintain that. So then the Emergence Fund has been used in supporting survivors to access specialized services. There are good lessons that are coming out of that. And the last one is a training has enriched a good report of gender-based violence data based on the 6 forms of GBV according to the GBV IMS, and not on the traditional way, which was based on the 16 forms. Here, many of the trained participants were saying they were only aware of only one form of GBV, which was rape, but they were surprised that there are so many that they were not recognizing. Next, please. Next slide. Yeah, and then finally, of course, there was we wanted to get some voice from the participants, and this is what one of the participants said. Before I made such judgment, like asking questions about why the survivors were in certain places at certain times, while they knew that at those places there could be bandits down there at those times. I also used to diverge in the community the information that I received from the survivors. But now I understand that this should not be done, and that I must keep information confidential. Thank you so much. I want to hand over to Katie.
Great, thank you. So I'm just going to share a little bit about kind of next steps following these midpoint workshops. The key recommendations or adaptations that we want to make now in the coming months based off the feedback received is refresher training. So particularly for frontline staff and for community leaders that have done the handling GBV disclosures trainings, we want to go back and just go back over some of the key content and really reinforce that. We also want to make sure there's sufficient follow-up, particularly with the frontline staff, that they're getting support from their managers and others in putting it into practice. We want to add a bit more content, which will be added into the refresher training on topics where participants felt that they didn't get into enough detail. So one of those that's been raised in both DRC and South Sudan was around adolescents and children doing disclosures. Then there was also a lot of requests to expand the training, to offer it to more people. So we have been doing, in South Sudan, we've already done a training for other non-GBV actors in Yei, as well as our own frontline staff, but for other organizations too. And we're planning to do trainings for more cohorts of community leaders that are based in different communities. We're doing the same in DRC as well. Then we want to try to make sure that the handling disclosures training is really kind of mainstreamed across organizations and is mandatory for new frontline staff. So thinking about ways to make this practical and possible. And lastly, another recommendation that's emerged is to try the emergency fund in South Sudan as well, based off some of the learnings in DRC. It will work a bit differently in South Sudan because obviously the context is very different and the needs are slightly different, but we're using some of the same principles for that. So next slide. So our key next steps for the final year of the project will be, firstly, now we need to conduct our midpoint workshop in Iraq. That will take place in a couple of weeks. Then we'll be continuing the pilot activities, building in these learnings and recommendations until early 2025. At which point each of the teams will then conduct an endpoint workshop, and we'll all come together for a global workshop where we're going to really reflect on how each of the pilots have gone and start drafting our overall guidance notes, final guidance documents and case studies. And then the final step will be to disseminate those as widely as we can so that other peer organizations can hopefully use this and put it into practice as well. I'll hand back to Gabriella.
Yeah, so thank you, Katie. Can everybody hear me a bit better now? So sorry about that at the beginning, and thank you to Maureen for taking over. Yeah, is the audio okay?
Seems to be okay, yeah.
Okay, great. So I might actually leave my camera off just to maybe that will help the connection. So thank you everyone for tuning into the presentation thus far. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to our two project managers who are here representing the Women for Women South Sudan office in Yei, and then in the DRC as well. So you've heard a little bit about their projects and what we've done at the midpoints, but we wanted to ask them to speak to you all a bit more in detail about some of the kind of key learnings that have come up. And as well, we'll have the Associate Director at Women for Gender Equality and Social Power, Anastasia, who you also heard speak a bit before, answer a few questions as well. So I'll turn it over to Martina first. If you could just tell us maybe what is one of the major things that you've learned from the piloting so far?
Okay, thank you, Gabriella. Thank you, team. From the experience that we had right from the first phase of the project to the second phase, which is the piloting, we have learned a lot of things. First of all, this project came in a time when really there's a lot of need to help survivors, but there are very few actors, I mean the GBV response organizations that could support survivors. So putting survivors at the center project is the way to go. And everyone has really have high hope, especially partners working within Yei. So most especially the handling disclosure training, which has opened up their eyes in such a way that everybody has realized they have been doing things in a wrong way. The handling of GBV disclosure training have clearly helped non-GBV specialist organizations to clarify their roles in the field. You know, like the testimony given by the participant that before they were doing things the wrong way, they were intervening into situations which they are not supposed to. But now this training of GBV disclosure has helped them to handle disclosure of GBV incidences without, causing more harm. And the end goal always is the referral. So they know very well, as non-GBV specialist organization, their role is to refer. And this is aided by having the updated referral pathway that points to the services where GBV survivors can be referred. So knowing these differences has really helped into the role of specialists it has helped non-GBV specialists not to enter into the role of GBV specialists or GBV managers like they were doing before. So these differences has helped them participate. You know, it helps them to really re-emphasize survivor-centered approach in their work. They are making sure that survivors have the right to make a decision of which services they want to be referred to or they want to choose. So they are not forcing survivors anymore, but they give clear explanation, guiding them on the available services within the local realities. Then they are free to make choice. So it is survivors-centered approach that they have appreciated so much in all the trainings that we did for our frontline staff as Women for Women, and also when we replicate this training to other non-GBV specialist organizations within the project area, they have so much appreciated it because it is something they have never come across. So this is what we felt as a country office, something which has been so far learned through the piloting period of this project. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Martina. Jeff, did you have anything you wanted to add on to that answer? Just about any of the major learnings that have emerged in the DRC? I'm sorry, Jeff, it seems like we're still having audio problems. I don't know if anybody else can hear him. I know I cannot.
No, I don't think so. Maybe Anastasia can answer that question because she was in the DRC for the reflection workshop. Anastasia, your reflections on the DRC and any emerging learnings.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Yeah, it's really unfortunate that Jeff cannot speak. I mean, sometimes these things happen. But one of the key learnings that is coming across the two countries and also at the global level is the fact that the frontliners, their role is to train. And while they are training, they receive information from the women when they have been abused. And in the process, they were not able to know exactly how to handle mediation better. So sometimes they could overstep their roles. And this has been echoed even recently in DRC when we are doing the feedback. But now that they have received the training, they are very, very careful to make sure that they provide a safe space for the women to be able to listen to them. And after they have listened to them, they get consent and they give them information about the services that are available within their reach. And they want to ask them what to be done next, because by the end of the day, the survivor is the one who is supposed to be making the decisions. That's why they are being given that information to make informed decision. And so the trainers have been very, very appreciative of the fact that they can use the psychological first aid booklet to allay anxiety, to provide information, and then to link the women to the GBV specialists at their area. But there are also other learnings that they were saying, the fact that you can refer a survivor and then they decline referral. What is it that you can do? The fact that they're able to provide that information and they are able to encourage them to get the information and make that decision is again another area where the trainers were feeling that they are doing the right thing and they do not want to do any harm. Thank you very much.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Jeff, we can hear you. Great.
Good. What we also learned is that practicing confidentiality through role-playing is important for stakeholders to understand why maintaining confidentiality is important and what can happen to a survivor when confidentiality is broken. So there are some good practices that stakeholders have been able to acquire through the trainings that we we gave to the people who participated in the training. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. If I could ask maybe Anastasia, if you could maybe talk about what have been some of the benefits of using a participatory approach during phase one, during the research, and then now through the midpoint workshops, if you could maybe just talk about why or how you've seen this to be beneficial to the project.
Yes, thank you so much, Gabriela. The participatory method we have seen going back to the data collection period, coming to design the pilot activities and coming to implement the activities has been very, very collaborative and has brought in many stakeholders, GBV specialists and GBV specialists, the communities and the participants, our organization staff, and the service providers. So one of the key thing that we have seen globally is the fact that we are able to link, we are able to work together in a collaborative manner, knowing very clearly what each organization, each person, each participant, what their roles are. Number two is the fact that in a participatory method, people have the information and they feel part of the project, and therefore when it comes to implementation, they want to contribute more. They are interested to know the results. They're interested to know what role they can play. They're also interested to be able to know what they can do after. And we have been able also to receive information where, especially the community leaders, whose role is to deal with the communities, answer some of the challenges within the communities. Once they have been given this training, it's like they have been opened up. And so being part of the data collection, being part of the decision making, being part of the implementers, as well as being part of the communities themselves, it's a very positive aspect of even looking beyond in terms of sustainability. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Anastasia. So for Martina and Jeff, another question for you both is, how would you like the humanitarian community more broadly to think about some of the findings and learnings that are coming out of the midpoints at this moment in time? So really thinking here about what are some of the implications that there might be for future humanitarian programming or policy that you both are seeing.
Okay. The Putting Survivors at the Center project is a very unique project, and it's a project that will support survivors, GBV survivors, by all the humanitarian actors if these results of the research come out really positive. And in that way, we see this project will help so much in collaborate in the area of, it becomes in a collaborative manner in such a way that both GBV actors and non-GBV specialist organization will be able to support survivors in the best way, because they would have known exactly their area of work and how to support survivors. And this can only work best when we make this project activity known to many other partners that are beyond our project area here. Like, we need to share this information even within within the cluster, this at the state level, at our county level, so that they are aware what is going on. And at the end of the day, when this project phase 3 has ended, and the practice that we need to give out to all the organizations to to embrace will be something not a surprise, because every organization or all the actors, humanitarian actors, would have been aware of what has been taking place, and they are also involved through the participatory approach that we have already started engaging them. It will be something not new, and it will not surprise anyone. So they would embrace it, and it will be rolled out to support GBV survivors in globally, I would say. So I think that's what I would say, unless if I'm off point, I don't know, but
No,
have
no,
I,
that's
have
great.
I answered? Have I answered the question exactly, or have,
Yeah, thank you, Martina.
because there was there was breaking, yeah.
No,
When you
that
are
was fine.
okay.
So actually, we have some really good questions that have emerged in the Q&A. So Jeff, I wanted to jump to you, and as well, Katie and Anastasia, if you wanted to add in. There were some questions about the steps that the project has taken to support survivors with different intersectionalities. So thinking here about survivors with disabilities. So Jeff, if your microphone is still working, I was wondering if you could maybe just talk about that briefly for those who have been asking in the Q&A. Jeff, are you able to respond?
Yes, I can respond. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes, thank you for the floor. About the people living with disabilities, they are among the people that we consulted when we designed the pilot. And the women and girls living with disabilities that we organized a focus group, they said that they are facing a lot of challenges to access services. And the challenges that they face are challenges related to accessibility. There are challenges like lack of sign language interpreters, and they are discriminated, they are stigmatized in the community. And then the project had to design some guidelines on these people, on how to support them. And as a matter of fact, the frontline staff of Women for Women will be trained very soon, next week, on how to support these people, these specific people living with disabilities. And the project is trying to bring in, where necessary, some interpreters of sign languages, as of course the project cannot tackle all the challenges that the people are going through, but as far as the knowledge and the skills are concerned, the frontline staff of Women for Women will be equipped with all the guidelines, all the principles that they have to put into to take into account while supporting GBV survivors living with disabilities.
Great, thank you, Jeff. And then very quickly, recognizing that there's only about 4 minutes left, I wanted to give Katie or Anastasia, and then Jeff, you can also come in as well, just a chance to talk a little bit more about the emergency fund in the DRC, because we have had a few questions come up just about the mechanism itself, how we developed it, and if there were any kind of SOPs that had been put together to manage the fund. So just wanted to turn the floor over to you, Katie, because I know that we're a bit short on time.
Sure, yeah. So yes, we did develop some procedures for the fund, which include things like who is eligible to receive it, in what situations, the actual logistics of kind of transferring those funds, which took a lot of working out. Actually, it was, once we got into this, it was surprisingly one of the most complicated activities probably of the project, because there was a lot of different logistical concerns and confidentiality concerns and risks about how we ask women things, but we don't want to follow up with them, because that kind of could put them at risk, but also then you've got to balance the issues around kind of fund distribution and kind of verifying things. So there were a lot of intricacies, but we did kind of iteratively develop some procedures for this, which then the frontline staff all received training on. So they were familiar with how to do it as disclosures came to them. Yes, and there is some flexibility. So there are kind of set levels included in terms of how much different, like how much we can provide for different types of situations. But there is also flexibility. For example, if there's a survivor with disability that's going to need a higher cost for transport or or for their service, there's flexibility within the procedures for us to kind of go around and make exceptional circumstances.
Amazing, thank you. Jeff or Anastasia, I don't know if you wanted to add anything more to what Katie has said about the emergency fund?
Yeah, just to agree with what Katie is saying, there are standard operating procedures. We have a memorandum of understanding with service providers because we are non-GBV specialists, and therefore we map out the GBV specialists, and we know where we can access them. So in terms of the modalities for dispensing the funds, there are those procedures that are followed once a survivor has disclosed, which is usually within the areas where we operate. Then whoever has received that information will start off by reporting, and the person is referred. The survivor doesn't have to be involved because we do not want the survivor to be delayed in as far as supporting for them to access the services is concerned. So these are modalities and the procedures that are being done by Women for Women International in their offices, with their finance, and then with the service provider, so that in between here, there is no delay, and the survivor doesn't have to get anxious. Thank you.
Thank you, Anastasia. Thank you, everyone. We're recognizing that it is 10 o'clock, so our webinar has officially finished, but if people maybe wanted to stay on for a few more minutes just so we could address, there was another question that came up, and this is either from Martina or Jeff, just to speak about perhaps some of the awareness raising activities that have been conducted in both DRC and South Sudan as part of the Putting Survivors at the Center project. And once we get your responses to this, we'll formally conclude the webinar. Thanks to those that are able to stay on, and for those that have joined us and need to leave.
Okay, thank you, Gabriela, to the questions of awareness raising, which in South Sudan, we have really massively done it. We have done it in three ways. We have the posters that has clear pictures of GBV behavior, which even someone who cannot read can easily interpret. We also raise awareness through radio talk show. We also have drama series, which was running on the FMs for the community to be able to understand and ask questions about the drama performed, which is on GBV. They were able to see the disadvantage of certain cultural practices that were taken like normal, but it's GBV itself. So that one is another way that we have raised awareness. We also have some video playback. There's some pre-recorded video, which is it's a kind of drama on GBV. So community were able to watch it. We take these videos to our training centers where women are trained with the social and economic skill. So these people are gathered and they watch, and we give them the platform to ask questions and also to be able to give comment on what they have seen. So that one has also created awareness, and they encourage us to next time involve even their husbands so that they can watch together. And this is the far we have gone with awareness raising as far as Putting Survivors at the Center in South Sudan is concerned, because awareness raising was one of our pilot activities for the phase 2. So we made sure we use that moment very well, using all these methods to raise awareness. Thank you.
Thank you, Martina. I think Jeff might hop back on might be able to join us in a second, but if not, I don't know. I wanted to give everybody else who has spoken, Maureen, Anastasia, Sirisha, Katie, Martina, any of you all from the program, as if anybody has any final thoughts. And just to say that if you did send us a question in the Q&A function, we are working to quickly get you all some answers before we close the webinar. Anybody have any final thoughts?
One thing I wanted to say, Gabriela, is that this is a pilot, and we have realized that capacity building is very, very key, because it gives people knowledge and it makes people change in the way they do things, and also in the manner they behave. And so going forward, this is one of the areas we want to expand based on the modules that are going to be developed out of this pilot. Would want to promote capacity building across everybody, including our drivers. We feel everybody should know how to handle disclosure. What does it mean to be abused? What is a gender-based violence? How do you know someone has been abused by looking at the person? Is it possible? But just for you to have that knowledge, and how then can you refer? Where do you refer? So we have intentions of expanding the knowledge across the people we work with, our officers, our consultants, and the teams that really interact with our participants. Thank you.
Thank you, Anastasia. Thank you very much, everybody, for taking the time to join us for this wonderful webinar. And again, apologies for our audio difficulties in the beginning. Please keep an eye out for future webinars. Again, we are currently in the middle of phase 2, and there will be more information sharing sessions that we will have to let you all know about our findings. And again, in phase 3 of the project, which is the final year, next year, we will be putting together some guidelines and other key documents, including case studies, so about things like the emergency fund and the DRC, to give you all more information about how the pilot was developed and how it's been working. So keep an eye out for those. And again, thank you very much for joining us, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you all for joining.
Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone.